is my review of the Bristol Classic 400i after 1,500 kilometers. Pew, 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 pew. I've had my Bristol Classic for a little under 3 months now, and I've officially completed the break-in period of 1,500 kilometers. Now it's time to give my thoughts and impressions on what the bike has been like in my hands, what problems I have encountered if any, how the performance has been like, and finally, if I would recommend this bike. Before I begin though, let me just clarify that everything I say in this video is based on my own personal opinions and experiences only. Therefore, opinions and experiences may vary between different owners of this bike. Take everything I say with a grain of salt, and my only hope is that if you're planning on buying a Bristol Classic 400, this video will be of help to you in making a decision. Also, my only other bike experience prior to the Classic 400 is a Keyway Cafe Racer 152, which is my very first motorcycle, so I'll be basing a lot of my comparisons on that. First, let's talk about how the Classic 400 looks, sounds, and feels like. Number 1. The Bristol Classic 400 is an absolute stunner. In the 3 months that I've owned the Classic 400, I can no longer count how many times I have caught people staring at my bike. And it's not just a normal stare either. It's the type of stare that a child gives their favorite toy when they see it at a toy store during Christmas. But don't get me wrong, a lot of that has to do with the fact that, in general, classic bikes always look good. That's part of their vintage charm. And to be fair to my Keyway Cafe Racer, I get similar looks from other people while riding that bike too. That being said, it cannot be stated enough how stunning the Bristol Classic 400 looks. In a sea of underbones, scooters, and fellow classic bikes, it definitely stands out in a crowd. So, if you're planning on getting this bike, expect to be the center of attention, especially if you catch yourself at the front during a stoplight. Next, I want to talk about the weight of the bike, which is, well, it's actually pretty light. The very first time that I test rode the bike, my first thought was, it feels like it's barely heavier than my Keyway. Because it's so light, navigating through traffic is not difficult at all, considering that this is already a big bike. The lightness factor does become a bit of a negative when you're going fast, especially on the expressway. When there are strong winds, it's easy to feel overwhelmed, but if you're an experienced rider unlike me, I'm sure it won't be a problem for you. What did take some time to adjust to is the fact that the Classic 400 feels significantly longer than my Keyway Cafe Racer. There have been times when I almost fell down while making a sharp turn because I had been so used to turning on a smaller bike. So that's something to keep in mind if you're upgrading to a bigger bike. Next up is the sound of the exhaust, and this is probably gonna get some mixed reactions. The Classic 400 to me does not sound like a big bike at all. Now, to be clear, I understand that there are many riders out there who like loud bikes. I mean, the exhaust is probably the most common bike part that gets replaced in a new bike. But that's just not my style. I like the fact that the Bristol 400 is not that loud. If loud bikes are your thing though, then the first agenda on your list of upgrades for the Bristol 400 should be to replace the 2 exhausts with aftermarket ones. But if you're like me and you're wary of being bothersome to your neighbors at 6 o'clock in the morning because you have to warm up your bike, then the stock exhausts are perfectly adequate. Now here's an interesting quirk about the Classic 400. You can't turn off the headlight. I mean, it's not really that big of a deal, but I was a little surprised when I found out about it just after I bought my bike. If you're very particular about the headlight being turned on while the sun is out, then that might be a bit of a problem. If not, then no big deal. What I do like is a plate number light at the back. That's a very nice touch. Alright, now let's talk about the performance of the Bristol Classic 400. In terms of power, the Bristol 400 has all the power that I could ever want and need. I do the occasional overtaking when the situation calls for it, and the Bristol 400 is more than capable of gaining speed fast. Coming from a 150cc motorcycle, it was a bit mind-blowing to experience all that power that comes from a 400cc bike. Going 80 to 100 kilometers per hour when the situation calls for it is a breeze for this bike. And you can definitely push the bike a lot further than that. I wouldn't really advise you to, but if you're into that, it's not gonna be hard with this bike. Something that I really like with my Bristol 400 that I didn't like with my Keyway is how easy it is to find neutral when shifting. However, it was not always that easy. After about a month since I purchased the bike, I took it to Tagaytay for its first long ride, and it was definitely put to the test. Curiously, while I was on my way and experiencing heavy traffic, I suddenly felt that it became easier and easier to find neutral. Now, it's not a problem at all. Maybe it's something that happens when the bike gets warmed up enough, but whatever it is that happened, shifting to neutral is no longer hard to do on my Bristol 400. Now, speaking of traffic, the sides of the bike get really hot when you're stuck in traffic. Maybe that's to be expected of any big bike, but it definitely took some getting used to. Sometimes it got so hot that I had to lift up my legs. As long as you're riding on free roads, then it's not something you have to concern yourself. But when you do encounter traffic, expect your legs to feel a little hot. Now here's something really weird about the bike. The fuel indicator. Normally you would expect the fuel indicator light to turn on when you're almost out of gas, right? In my experience with the Bristol 400, it felt like the fuel indicator was turning on a bit too early, so I always felt like I was about to run out of gas. I decided to do a test where every time the fuel indicator turned on, I went to the nearest gas station to get a full tank of gas. Here's what I found. On the several times that I got a full tank, the average number of liters I consumed on the bike was about 8.3 liters. Now, since the fuel tank capacity of the Bristol 400 is at 13.5 liters, that means that every time the fuel indicator light turned on, I still had an average of about 5.2 liters left. That means that if, let's say, my bike can average about 20 kilometers per liter and my fuel indicator light turns on, then I should be able to travel at least another 100 kilometers before I completely run out of gas. I find it very strange that my bike would indicate that it needs a fuel refill when it still has a lot of gas left. I'm also curious to know if my fellow Bristol 400 owners are experiencing the same thing. So if you're planning on getting a classic 400, that's definitely something to look out for. If your fuel indicator light turns on, it doesn't really mean you're almost out of gas. Heck, you could actually travel from Quezon City to Tagaytay with the gas you have left. Now here's something that I experienced that might just be unique to me, but I don't really know for sure. The first month of using the bike, my horn broke. It was surprising to me because I don't even really use the horn that much, but within the first month, it broke, so I had to buy a new one aftermarket. But I did take it back to dealership when the horn broke, and the manager there told me that he would file a warranty claim on the horn since it's most likely a factory defect. With that being said, my last tidbit is dedicated to how amazing the service has been and my experience has been with the Bristol Pasig dealership. Everyone there has been extremely kind and courteous, from Ma'am Leslie to Sir Luigi to Sir Mecanico and even the owner, Sir Luis. Their service is absolutely top-notch, the best I've ever experienced from all the dealerships I've been to. Not only that, but I was able to get my plate number in 2 weeks. 2 weeks! I've owned my Keyway Cafe Racer for 2 years and it still doesn't have a plate. 2 years. 2 freaking years. If you're planning on getting any Bristol bike, I highly recommend the Pasig branch. 5-star service all around. So that's it. Those are all my observations about the Bristol Classic 400 after breaking it in at 1,500 kilometers. Would I recommend this bike? Absolutely 100%. Do I think it's a great starter bike? I'd probably recommend you try out a lower displacement bike first before you get into a 400cc bike. But yeah, I would say it's good as a starter bike as well. How does it compare to my Keyway Cafe Racer 152? I still love my Keyway and I will continue to ride it, but as far as everything goes, it's not even close. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Peace!